Hi, it's Mitch from Pickdawgz.com, and here to talk about how to make money this Major League Baseball season. You know, earlier I did a video talking about the most profitable teams of 2022. Today we're going to talk about the least profitable teams of 2022 and see how that relates to the 2023 Major League Baseball season. Take a look at some of the trends that made them the least profitable teams and some of the action, some of the streaks that got them there as well. You know, baseball betting, a lot of it has to do with perception, as it does with betting on any kind of sport. Some people believe if they bet on the same team over and over again, they're going to make money. As we showed you in our earlier video, that only worked for 9 teams out of 30 in Major League Baseball last season. And that is pretty average for a normal season. Most of the teams, if you bet them every single game, you lost a lot of money. It's all about situational betting. Betting teams in the right situation at the right prices. You have to shop the odds. While it seems like there's only pennies difference in the line and you say, well, I'm not a big enough bettor for that to make the difference. Over the course of a 162 game schedule times 30 teams, trust me, that adds up. And as we saw with the Atlanta Braves in our profitable teams, it makes the difference between a winning season and a losing season as far as your betting goes. And to be honest with you, to spread it around between a few books to always get the right line, well, it's well worth it to do that. Costs you nothing extra, just gives you that opportunity to win money. So be sure to check out our sportsbook offers over at Pickdawgz.com. I also put a link in the description. If you're working with just one book, you're cheating yourself and taking away the biggest advantage that you have over the books. But anyways, let's start taking a look at some of these teams. We'll go into some of the strategies, some of the thought process that I know most bettors go through that probably get them in trouble when they're looking at these teams. And a lot of people believe, well, you know, this team has lost a lot of games in a row. They can't possibly keep losing. We're going to show you some charts that's going to show you, yes, they can keep losing. And we're going to show you other charts which says, you know what? There's only certain amounts that certain teams will lose. And the probability then reverses. So let's take a look at some of these teams as we move on. But anyways, let's look at the 21st most profitable team. So 9th from the bottom when it comes to betting last year, and that was the Boston Red Sox. The Boston Red Sox had some fundamental issues last year with their starting rotation. Basically, they had no number one starter. That Chris Sale, who was their number one starter, missed pretty much the entire season, and most of their other starting pitching really wasn't even starting pitcher caliber. It was pitching staff by committee, and the committee simply wasn't good enough. You know, when it hit the middle of the summer, though, after the Red Sox had really off to a very, very rough start, already down 10 units by May, as they hit the middle of the summer after the All-Star break, you can see this team started to dig their way out. So if you bought low there at about when they were about minus 100 units and then got back to either even, you know, where they were even for the season or around that plus 50 mark, you did extremely well. But if you hung on too long to the Red Sox and continued to ride it, if you became emotionally attached to a team, you could see what happened. It was nothing short of a disaster. A couple of head fakes that it looked like they were going to turn things around, but basically the general trend was down, and that's why they were the 9th worst team when it comes to profitability last season. When we go to our next team, the 8th worst team last season was the Milwaukee Brewers. This is a perennial playoff team that has one of the best pitching staffs in all of baseball. But when you're starting Corbin Burnes, and when you're starting Woodruff, when you're starting Freddie Peralta, when you're starting some of these great starting pitchers, you have to pay big prices on those pitchers. So you're laying minus 200 odds, minus 250 odds. When you lose, when you're laying that much, basically, it's like losing 2.5 games. And we saw that plenty with the Milwaukee Brewers. So as you see the chart really start to descend after the middle of the summer in July, heading all the way through into October, where they were edged out of the playoff race by the Philadelphia Phillies, who eventually went to the World Series, you can see that some of these drops are extreme. And the reason why these drops are extreme is because they're laying big prices with guys like Corbin Burnes, who simply did not deliver. You have to remember, the Milwaukee Brewers went into Chicago last year against the Cubs, the same team they faced this year on opening day and in their opening series, and got busted up time after time by the Chicago Cubs. But that's how you end up being the 8th worst betting team in baseball last season. We'll move on to the 7th worst betting team in baseball, and this was the Kansas City Royals. This was simply a team that just had no answers. They have some good young talent. They have Witt Jr., they have senior leadership in Salvi Perez, but they have very little else. They have a few good young arms, like Singer, but the thing is, they also have Zach Greinke, who they hold on to, and is their opening day starter this year. They play at home for opening day, but as you can see, they started off with a little bit of a profit out of the gate, and it was a sharp and steep descent afterwards. They did head fake through August and played some better baseball, putting it together as they did the call-ups from the minor leagues, and other teams did the call-ups. But a lot of that had to do with the scheduling of playing in the American League Central. So playing in the American League Central, which is traditionally and was last year one of the weakest divisions, that's where you see that bump in the Kansas City Royals. So outside of the division, probably not a great play, but inside the division, they actually fared pretty well. That's how you end up being the 7th worst betting team in baseball. We'll continue on and we'll go to the 6th worst betting team. And this team is a team that finished in first place in their division the prior year. That's the San Francisco Giants. They had a key free agent pickup in Carlos Rodon, who did not work out for them. And they had several other players who just simply underperformed. I like the Giants. I've won a lot of money on the Giants over the years because the expectations in the National League West are always that the Dodgers are going to run away with it. The Padres were also seen as big contenders for the past several seasons. So most of the value was on the Giants, but the issue was for the Giants, they just simply could not win games. It was the bullpen that absolutely crushed them. I think if we were looking at this chart for first 5 innings for the San Francisco Giants, we might be looking at an entirely different story. And I think until further notice, that might be one of the ways that we look at the San Francisco Giants. Boy, I know every time I bet the Giants, which was plenty last season, every time Rodgers stepped onto the field, I basically knew I was going to lose my bet. Yet, I fell for it time and time again because there seemed to be value there. And with guys like Crawford, we know that they have the leadership in the dugout to win because these guys have won before. But missing Buster Posey, who had retired last season, this team was just never the same. And as you can see, it was a steep, hard decline for the Giants. After June, the season was basically over. They had some guys that pitched well. They had some guys that didn't pitch well. But I think there'll be some guys that we'll look out for this season. The Giants could be a good value out there because there are no expectations of them. We're going to find out a lot about the Giants in their opening series. They head to the Bronx and take on the New York Yankees. For the next pick, it's the 5th least profitable team in baseball. That was the Texas Rangers. And when we look at the Rangers out of the gate, Globe Life Field, when we first saw games there a couple of years ago, it seemed like this was going to be a pitcher's ballpark. But what we soon found out is, the pitchers were just pitching pretty well at Globe Life. And we soon found out as well that some of those pitchers, wouldn't pitch there well for a long time. The thing that we knew about the Rangers last season was that, they didn't quite have a pitching staff that could stay healthy throughout the entire season. And while they had some nice acquisitions, from the Rockies and picking up some journeymen that worked out for them, guys like Martin Perez, who we found tremendous value on, overall, the pitching staff just couldn't hold it together. When you see some of these bumps up for the Rangers where it looked like they're headed down, yet the chart goes back up, that is Martin Perez creating tremendous value as he squared off against several of the big number 1 pitchers in baseball at big prices. This year, though, for the Texas Rangers, this is a situation we're going to have to monitor. We're not going to get great prices on the Rangers because of the pitching staff and the revamping of it. Most notably, the signing of Jacob deGrom to be the ace of the staff. If deGrom remains healthy, we're going to see some situations possibly to fade the Rangers because, as we know, they haven't always delivered. They spent big money to get guys like Seager and Semien, who, while they hit well, they can't stop the other team from scoring, something the Rangers have struggled to see teams do. What we saw is that after July, they took a really sharp hit, and as the season started to wind down and they knew that they were out of it, they basically gave up out on the field. You could see that drop. If you bet $10 on the Rangers every single game last year, you lost $175.50. You were on the 5th worst team in all of baseball to bet on. As we continue on down to the 4th worst team in baseball, this is the Washington Nationals. And the thing about the Nationals, who are the 5th worst team in baseball, sorry about that, 26th overall. When it comes to profitability, if you bet $10 on them, very similar to the Rangers, you lost $179.20. We knew the Nationals were going to be a bad team. They had traded away a lot of their key players, and guys like Trey Turner, guys like Max Scherzer. And the thing is, they were unable to get any kind of quality at all or anything out of Steven Strasburg, who was the holdover from those great World Series teams. We saw the Nationals, lose Rendon in earlier seasons. We saw all of these other things happen, and the Nationals, they built that winner through the farm system, primarily added some key players at the end of the run to push them over the top. And that's what the Nationals appear to be content to do once again. We're going to have to keep our eyes on the Nationals. They have a lot of money invested in Patrick Corbin. We don't have to pay a lot on Corbin these days. But when you look at the chart here on the Nationals, these losing streaks are extreme. It seems that when they lose, they are losing in bunches because the Nationals you're generally getting pretty reasonable odds on. So those lines wouldn't be that sharp to the downside. But when you can see using some simple technical analysis here, similar to like you would use when evaluating the stock market, you can see when they get about 19 units down in that range, which is a long way to be, they seem to have some support there, and that's what they would call that on Wall Street. If you're looking at a stock, you can see technical support. You can see the bottom right there, in between mid-July and August, and you can see that same technical support right there between August and September. That's about as low as it would go, and each time that it hit there, it bounced off there, and in both cases, fairly sharply. So if you could get in there and start betting on the Nationals when you see them hit that bottom, and you can determine where there's a double bottom, and that's what they call a chart like that, you can see that there's room to the upside and, a good chance to make money on a bad team, because more than likely, you're going to get really, really good prices on them. Regardless, no matter what prices you got in the Nationals, they stunk it up last year and were busting up bankrolls like no one's business for their backers. The next team we're going to look at is the 27th worst team in baseball. That was the Cincinnati Reds, and most of the damage for the Reds was done right out of the gate. The Reds could not win a game to start the season last year, and they really, really struggled last year to even get anything going positive. It took them, by the time April was over, you could see by this chart, the Reds were in a steep decline, a hole that they dug themselves that they had no chance of getting out of. There were several opportunities to bet the Reds. We saw some value, and after July, they had pretty much bottomed out, and we had really good opportunities to make money on the Reds. You can see where they were down about 200 units, got it all the way back to down about 50 units. So whether you're starting at 0 and going to 150 or going from down 200 to down 50, it's still a 150 unit move. That's 15 units That's 15 units if you're betting $10 a game. So you can make money off teams that overall have a bad season. You just have to find that bottom. You never want to try and catch a falling knife. you want to look for technical support on the charts, and you can find these charts, as always, at sportschatplace.com under the betting tools. All you have to do is look at profitable teams. There's a little drop-down arrow next to each team. You can open up, and you get these nice little charts just like this. You can look at it on a weekly, monthly, yearly, 180 days, however you like. We have that information for you, and we'll be doing plenty more videos just like this, maybe doing some technical chart analysis as well. I'm going to try and get more involved in the betting tools this baseball season and all seasons to help you guys win some more games and to take a look at some of these tools that are available to you. I know that a lot of the time you see me on the live show and I'm yucking it up with the guys, or you see me on the videos where I generally only have a minute or two to speak with you guys. In these longer form videos, which I'm going to be doing on at least one every single day, we'll be able to talk about some of these things and make some money using the way that I make money betting on sports. The part of it that I haven't really had the opportunity to show you in my last 15 years online. I'm excited to share this information with you and get you guys on the winners. Of course, if you don't have time to do this stuff, just head on over to pickdawgz.com or sportschatplace.com. Click on the premium picks. We have the best handicappers in the world. But anyways, we go to our next team, the 28th worst team in baseball. They were the Minnesota Twins, and part of the problem for the Twins were they had pretty big expectations of them because they had made the playoffs out of the American League Central the prior year. And when you make the playoffs, well, all of a sudden, people believe in you. And anytime that you have any kind of negative movement to you, like you see the Twins had right out of the gate there, people will continue to back you, and you're not going to find the value that you need. Now, the Twins, as they moved into the summer, continued to play decent baseball. They had picked up Carlos Correa. He had blended in well. Joe Ryan was pitching well for the Twins, and they had a few other guys that had pitched pretty well for them as well. But the issue is that once they headed in after July, this team was pretty much done. And you could see the wheels simply fell off the cart. This isn't a situation where you try and jump on board with a team that isn't winning because they're not popular, or you see some kind of betting action on some app that you pay like $10 a month for or something. I mean, if you're paying $10 a month for it, it's probably worth about $10 a month. We could charge hundreds of dollars for the information in our betting tools. We don't do it. I like doing it for free. I just want you guys to win. You guys know I do this because I love it. And hopefully you guys can see that every single day here at Pickdawgz. But anyways, when you see a chart like this, like you see for the Twins last season, this is a team that you got to just stay out of the way because it is a free falling, a knife is what they call it on Wall Street. Don't try and catch a falling knife. You got to wait for that bounce and, make sure that you have some sort of support there to go back in and find a position. But as you see on this chart, there was no support. There was no bounce. There was just a lot of blood on the streets for backers of the Minnesota Twins last season. We head to the second to worst team in all of baseball to bet on last season. Also a team that had one of the biggest payrolls in all of baseball, and that is the Los Angeles Angels. They started the season and with big expectations, as they always do. Mike Trout, Shohei Ohtani, Anthony Rendon, three of the highest paid players in all of baseball. They had signed Noah Syndergaard, who appeared, like he could possibly add something to the rotation after he had completed his surgery, had recovered from the surgery, and they acquired him in free agency. Of course, he was a superstar with the New York Mets. And as you can see, the Angels did get off to a nice start to last season. But then the wheels started falling off the cart, and they fell off really, really fast. Mike Trout was injured. Anthony Rendon gone for the season as well. And as you can see, the Angels continued to go with them. They did not have the starting pitching. They didn't have the relief pitching. They didn't have the bats. They had nothing at all except for a very big payroll and a lot of people believing in the Angels because they had players that weren't there. We all love Shohei Ohtani. I don't not like big name players or high price players or anything like that. This guy is a treat to watch, and I've been watching baseball for a very long time, and I will tell you, he's not only one of the best hitters I've ever seen, he's also one of the best pitchers I've ever seen, and whatever he makes, which I believe is $65 million this season, he deserves it because he is worth the price of the best pitcher, and he's worth the price of the best hitter. And the thing is, though, the Angels weren't worth the best price of anything. As you can see, this team bottomed out and flatlined it. So it was basically you were betting against yourself night in and night out. You had maybe an opportunity there at the end of August to maybe scrape back a little of it. But the thing is, if you bet $10 on the Angels every game last season, you lost $230, and there's nothing fun about that. Like I said, by the time you got to the end of August, where there was any kind of bounce at all where you can make money on the Angels, it was too little too late. And if anything, it was an avoid. I don't think that you necessarily have to get on the other side of some of these big time losers, because you're going to have to pay a price to do that. But at the same time, you don't want to jump aboard saying that there's no way that they can continue to lose that many games. Oh, yes, they can, because we've seen it time and time again from many of these teams. And the worst team in all of baseball last season was the Miami Marlins. They just simply did not have the talent to get there. They have a lot of great young players on this Marlins team, especially that pitching staff. They have an embarrassment of riches. In fact, they had the National League Cy Young Award winner, Sandy Alcantara. They also had Alcantara also should have been the starter for the National League in the All-Star game. But the issue was the All-Star game was in Los Angeles last season, and they gave it to Clayton Kershaw, almost like a Lifetime Achievement Award, as Alcantara was clearly the better player. But being the classy player that Sandy is, you didn't hear a peep out of him about exactly what happened and how it all went down. But as we saw from the Marlins, once we got past that summer and they knew that they were clearly going to be out of it, well, it was call-ups. It was all sorts of different pitchers coming in there, all sorts of different players, and some really tough breaks in out of the bullpen. The Marlins just could not score runs without Jazz Chisholm in the lineup, and they needed him. They needed everything they could get on the offensive side, but without him, you could see that very, very steep decline. He did not play in the All-Star game, and he did not play the rest of the season, and you can see they did not win a lot of games without him. It wasn't the pitching that let them down. It was certainly the bats. And I think if we do one of these, looking at the run line, I think we're going to see a different story here for the Marlins. They're not going to be at the bottom. They're certainly not at the top, but you won't see them at the bottom because they lost a lot of one-run games in low-scoring games. But anyways, you slice it, they were the worst betting team in all of baseball. If you bet $10 on them, you lost $246.50. Just take a quick look at the teams that we didn't cover in either the best or worst this season of last season's profitable and least profitable teams. And I think there's some names in here that might surprise a lot of people that are kind of middle of the pack. If you look there at number 15, it's the New York Yankees, a team a lot of people felt were going to the World Series. But at the end of the day, if you bet on $10 on the Yankees every single game, you lost money. You lost almost $61, $10 at a time. Nothing fun about it. I know it's not a lot of money, but at the same time, it's not as fun as winning. That's for sure. And a lot of that is not because the Yankees didn't have a very gaudy win total. They did. The Yankees won a ton of games last season. I believe they won over 100 games. They had streaks last year that were simply off the chain. But the thing is, when you're a minus 200 plus favorite every single time, you need to win at least 120 games just to break even. And that is a tall order for anyone, even for the New York Yankees and Aaron Judge, who had the greatest slugging season as a home run hitter in the history of home run hitters. He was simply sensational. We look at a team like the Arizona Diamondbacks, just missing out on probability there. Certainly a team that a lot of people are looking at this year for value, and a team that I like this year in the 10 spot. That's the Chicago Cubs. Only losing 70 cents if you bet $10 a game on them. The Cubs finished up the pack, and the thing is, they won a lot of games as underdogs. And when you look at the Cubs late in the season last year, they came from one of these teams that was down 150, 160, all the way back to being down just 70 cents. And they did that by winning a lot of games at the end of the season. Another playoff team we see in here is the Tampa Bay Rays. Once again, a team that, you had to lay big prices. They have some really good pitchers. A lot of those guys only go 5 innings. I think if we look at the money line for the Tampa Bay Rays, it actually probably would be a lot worse. And maybe we'll do a video looking at the money lines. But if you look at some of these other teams, the Chicago White Sox, a disappointing season. But you look at the Pittsburgh Pirates. Pirates, one of the worst teams in baseball. But when they won, you got, 2 to 3 units per win. When they lost, they were usually a dog, so you just lost one. So that's where the value is made. There's a lot of different ways to skin a cat, as they say, and there's a lot of ways to win betting on baseball. We're going to talk about a lot of those ways and a lot of the different strategies and value betting. We're going to talk about how you bet the favorites, when to lay the run line, when to lay the alternative run lines, or when to just stay the heck away. We're going to do that all season long and talk about it right here at Pickdawgz, along with our daily free picks, along with our sportsbook bonuses, which you can get by shopping lines. Hit it in the description of this video, or head on over to our website, pickdawgz.com. Just click on the sportsbook tab, and all sorts of offers and bonuses for you. If you're playing with just one sportsbook, you are donating money to the books. Always get the best lines. It is the biggest advantage that bettors have, regardless of what sport it is. And a sport like baseball, where they're all different lines at different books, and it looks like it's just a nickel off here or a penny off here. Trust me, over the course of a season, 162 games times 30 teams, it adds up to be a lot. It makes the difference between winning and losing. Look at a team like the Chicago Cubs right here. If you would have gotten just a little bit better prices on them, you would have had a winning season. I'm sure if you went to different books, you would do that. This is all through just one book, is all we look at when we look at these numbers. But anyways, this is Mitch. Thanks for joining me. We'll be doing daily videos, sports betting content just like these, and covering all different areas of sports betting. When it comes to baseball, we'll also cover the other sports as well. It just happens to be the beginning of baseball season, so that's the sport that we're talking about today. But we'll be covering the NBA, we'll be covering the NHL throughout the playoffs, we'll be covering playoff props and angles and all sorts of other things here, including looking at these profitable teams as the season goes on, so we know where we should put our money and where we should stay away. Thanks everyone for joining me. Let's make it a winning baseball season this year. Have a great day. Any questions? Be sure to leave them in the comments. I'll be happy to help you with them.